Hello, and welcome back to the Sunday Post. My name is Joe Greenwood, and late in the day, not being able to be joined by my regular co-host Tom Ballum. So we're doing the Sunday Post on a Monday, but it is here, regardless. And we are going to talk about Cory Sandhagen versus Marlon Vera. A couple flyweight fights as well from the UFC Fight Night. And a bit of PFL. Oh yeah, PFL in the UK. PFL Europe 1. PFL Europe 1. I'm going to talk about that, which was in Newcastle, which, as well as having some exciting young prospects on there, had the return of Dan Hardy on commentary. And to quote Dan Hardy, beautiful work. That's right. Anyway, let's talk about this UFC main event from Saturday night. Cory Sandhagen versus Marlon Vera. Now, first off, listeners, I just want to get this out there. I have just had an extremely strong coffee, so if I'm all over the place, I apologise. Oh, man. That's the good stuff right there. Cory Sandhagen defeats Marlon Vera by split decision. I'm not even going to... let's talk about it briefly. That judge who gave it to Marlon Vera, this was his first ever event that he's judged. And that was his first ever main event that he has judged. And that should be the last main event he judges for a while, because that was incredibly wrong. It was wrong, wasn't it? Like, there was no... How'd you get there? Alright, so first off, my scoring was 4-1 to Sandhagen, and to be honest, I could have given him all 5. I have seen some suggestions that you could give him 10-8s for the first 2 rounds. I'm going to give him neither of those at 10-8. I did see a scorecard of 50-43 going out there, which, to be honest, does sum up Marlon Vera's performance in this fight. But I'm not going to say it's all his fault. Like, it's mostly his fault. But Cory Sandhagen is very good, which also then plays into how frustrating Marlon Vera is. So, the lead up to this was Marlon Vera, he waits, and he waits, and he waits, and then he lands the shot, and down you go. Now, the problem is that an MMA main event is 5 rounds, which isn't a lot of time, you know? It's not like boxing where you get 12 rounds. Now, admittedly, it's 3-minute rounds, but still, ultimately it adds up to 36 minutes compared to 25. So you're dealing with 11 minutes less time. Of course, there's more variables, but if we're being honest, Marlon Vera doesn't have those variables. So this waiting thing, it works if you're Deontay Wilder, because you know that he's got the one weapon. You know it's an incredible weapon, and he knows that he'll catch you once with it. I mean, heck, he even caught Tyson Fury multiple times across 3 fights with it. That's how good it is. Whereas here, Marlon Vera was just not good enough to land one shot on Cory Sandhagen. And what's incredibly frustrating is that he did the annoying thing of pressing the action for the final 10 seconds to make it look like he's really trying to get the crowd fired up and whatnot. And like, we left on a high, the cheering, oh my God, it's crazy. But obviously he was nowhere near to landing on Sandhagen. And those last 10 to 20 seconds is exactly what Marlon Vera should have done for the previous 25. Now, obviously you can't do it at that pace for 25 minutes. I get that. And that's why you should, take minutes off. Take a round off, like Fiziev should do. Instead of just going full throttle. You take a bit of time off, which is what Sandhagen sort of did. He really took the third off. Even though you still could have given it to him, that which tells you something again about Marlon Vera and his output. But we'll get into it a bit more into the X's and O's in a moment. But again, it was very frustrating performance from Marlon Vera, but a superb performance from Cory Sandhagen, in which some people are actually blaming him for why this fight was maybe a bit lackluster. Yes, Cory Sandhagen, the man who outstruck Marlon Vera pretty much 2-1, is the reason why that fight was boring to you. I didn't find it particularly boring. I found it quite interesting, to be honest. So I'll go into it a little bit. Oh my god, 128 significant strikes to 58. I mean, more than 2-1. More than 2-1. It was just, it wasn't even remotely close. Now, what was interesting here was that Sandhagen continued his wrestling approach that he had in the Song Yadong fight, which he used that to open up strikes on Song and also taking him down. You know, he did the thing. He mixed his martial arts. How dare he? How dare he mix his martial arts? And it was too much for Marlon Vera. 2 takedowns in round 1 and round 2, leading to 2 minutes 30 of control time and 2 minutes 50 control time for Sandhagen. 32 significant strikes to 5 in the first, 18-6 in round 2. So a bit better from Vera in the second, but still massively outstruck. And that was... Let's go with that first. So what was quite interesting was that first round, Sandhagen sort of had him pressed up against the cage. He had like his right arm, he had the underhook. They were hand fighting. So he had the right hand underhook. Chito had the left arm overhook. Chito's pressed against the fence. They're hand fighting, and Chito's pulling his right hand away from Cory's left. And in doing that, he sort of gets himself side onto the fence, which then allowed Sandhagen to take Vera's left leg, hook it, and bring down to the ground. And that gave him that control time at the end of the first round. Now, Vera did land some really nice elbows initially that cut Sandhagen on the top of the head, and then you're like, oh my god, is he going to be like a Crimson Mask? You know, what's he going to be on the Muta scale in terms of blood? That's one for my Japanese pro wrestling fans there. But really it didn't happen again because they just, vassed him up, and Vera didn't land anything again that was going to really come close to cutting him. So, yeah, we didn't get that bloody mess of Sandhagen. But anyway, so he takes that takedown from the trip because he didn't want to give his hips away for a takedown. And then as soon as they hit the ground, Chito goes for the butterfly hooks, which is where you get the sort of feet in between the thighs to try and elevate the person. But Sandhagen steps over him, so he's not on his knees, he steps over him, so basically those butterfly hooks aren't really that useful, and then starts unloading some ground and pound on him from there. Gets him into half guard. And then what was interesting was Sandhagen got to side control from there, and he did this in the first and the second round. And obviously, if you're Sandhagen, you're a striker. Now, from side control, what strikes are you going to land? All you can land is really if you lay across them and land sort of an elbow downwards from a sort of when you're sort of like chest to chest pressure, which isn't going to have that sort of downward momentum you really want. So you have to posture up. You posture up in side control, you basically have no pressure on him. So Sandhagen did the correct thing, which was if you can't go to mount from there, go to half guard and just stay in half guard. And Vera had nothing from there. Absolutely nothing. From half guard, he was just almost like holding, and he was just like, I'll just give this round away, it's alright, this is my normal thing. But the problem is that Vera, with giving rounds away, he's trying to get the reads, whatever that is, so that he can land a big shot. But if you're on your back, you're not getting any reads, are you? So again, that game plan sort of goes out the window. And again, it happens in the second round where Vera gets the butterfly hooks. Sandhagen stands up over him and just basically punches past them to the point where they're completely ineffective. Here's the problem with Marlon Vera and his reads, is that it's fine doing that against a 40-year-old Frankie Edgar. That's fine doing that against I don't know how old he was, 36, 37, 38-year-old Dominic Cruz with no knees. Older guys in the fight game. Are they going to show you anything new and different? Probably not. We know what Dominic Cruz's entrances and exits are. We know that maybe his chin isn't the same as it used to be. Same for Frankie Edgar. Yeah, 2 spectacular knockouts. Quite incredible knockouts. Problem is that Cory Sandhagen has multiple entrances and exits that Vera just had nothing for. And the problem is this patient reading thing. After a while, it stops working, particularly in the second round. I mean, after the first round, his coach Perillo was like, you have to, let's take the second round now. Let's get cooking. Let's get going. It just didn't do that. And really what Vera should do is, if you're in that situation, is that, Vera has, I've got to give it to him, he's got an incredible chin, like a very strong chin. And I think sometimes he might have to just rely on that. He might just have to rely on that and just start, because he's a linear striker. Everything he does is linear. He doesn't have sort of like the side-to-side movement. He lets you have the side-to-side movement so he can catch you at the end of his linear attacks, i.e. the kicks that got Frankie Edgar and Dominic Cruz out there, and the shots he landed on Rob Font in their Fight Night main event, where Vera was outstruck, but he won every round, and that was from landing big power shots at the end of his linear movements, because Rob Font is so jab heavy that like the jab's going to come from one place, and you know that after he's thrown that jab, that's where he's kind of going to be, no matter what he throws at the end of that. So then you've got Marlon Vera just being able to be like, okay, you go, then I go, which doesn't really work against Cory Sandhagen, because Cory Sandhagen is not you go, I go. It's, well, I'm just going to go, and then you can try and go, and then I'm not going to be there. Constantly angling off, constantly changing direction. It was a really strong performance from Cory Sandhagen, and we learned that basically he probably is the most varied and best striker in the bantamweight division. Oh, but he lost to Peter Yan. Yeah, so what? So what? Yeah, and basically, like, he controlled the centre line by not always being on it. He just left Vera there, out to dry, and struck around him. Like, there was some really nice, like, moments where he had this hook, this sort of, like, step-in hook that was going to the body, or he went up top, and he just sort of, like, pressed Vera back up against the cage floor. I will say, though, that I think Sandhagen should stop just throwing that naked flying knee out in the centre of the cage. Like, it worked against Frankie Edgar, because, again, he was an older man who was at the end of his run. Doing it against Marlon Vera out in open space, I don't think is going to land. It does discourage guys from throwing knees, from throwing takedowns, I should say. The knee throw discourages people from throwing takedowns. Sorry, that coffee's hitting me now. Which then in turn sort of like should open up more striking possibilities for you and nullify one of their attacks. But for it to really fully land and crunch on a person, you need them pressed up against the cage. You need them flat-footed, not sort of like hands up moving forwards. Like, yeah, you could get them that way. But again, against Frankie Edgar, he had the height advantage as well. And he just absolutely timed him to perfection. Like, he just wasn't getting that timing on Vera. So maybe that'd be something for Sandhagen to drop. But overall, strong performance from Cory Sandhagen. And his call out of Merab, I kind of liked it. I know he said like it was a bit corny. Yeah, you shouldn't be saying that before you say a line. Just say the line and then do your little goofy smile afterwards, because then we can all acknowledge that it wasn't, the best line. But I kind of liked it. I kind of liked his semi-enthusiasm for it. Marlon Veras called out Piotr Yan. Yeah, great. Wow, I wonder what the first 2 rounds of that's going to look like. Just getting our reads, bro. Just getting our reads. I mean, Marlon, mate, you got to press forward a little bit. Got to press forward a little bit. But, onwards and upwards for both of these gentlemen. I mean, actually, I was kind of thinking about this with Merab, which is like, if you're like unwilling to fight the champ, I actually don't want you fighting top contenders. Like, I think Sandhagen and O'Malley should be the fight to make. And if you're Merab and you're refusing to fight the champion as the number one contender, I know he's your boy. That's fine. But you're fighting way down. Like, you're not going to be fighting top contenders. You should be fighting, you know, Chris Gutierrez, Saeed Nurmagomedov. No, Saeed? Umar Nurmagomedov. Wait, is that Umar? Is Umar the one in Bellator? I don't know if I got that wrong. No, Umar is the right one. Usman is the one that's in Bellator. Umar Nurmagomedov. That's who you should be facing. Because if you're not willing to face the champ, I don't want you taking contenders out. But that's what a good promoter would do, and Dana White is not a good promoter. Case in point, his absolute refusal to accept anyone but Colby Covington as the next welterweight contender. I mean, talk about taking the juice out of Masvidal versus Burns, my God. Like, after Edwards won, you should be like, wow, who knows what's going to happen in Miami now? And then after that, you could be like, whatever. Because also, like, if Masvidal beats Burns, he's going to get the next shot. Like, forget what Colby said. Forget all that. Right. Let's talk about the rest of this main card. Not talking about Holly Holm. Boring. Not talking about Nate Landwehr. He's crap. Macy Barber over Andrea Lee. I actually didn't think Macy Barber won that, to be honest, so whatever. Let's talk about Victor Altamirano versus Vinicius Salvador and CJ Vergara versus Daniel Da Silva. Now, we'll talk about Altamirano versus Vinicius Salvador first. Both of these fights at flyweight. The sloppiest flyweight fights I've seen in quite a while. Like, it was Salvador had like the Ronaldo 2002 haircut, 2002 World Cup haircut, and they were just throwing spin and stuff, and it was kind of landing, but not really. Like, they were both kind of blocking, and then Salvador did the Nick Diaz thing up against the cage. And I know he's like trying to get the crowd hyped and whatnot, and yeah, but you also kind of want to like go out there and win the fight, and I just really, like, they were swinging. It was like, it made me really think that like these guys are not UFC caliber, you know. And then when like people think they're like, oh, the UFC is where the best fighters are, and I'm like, did you watch that fight? Like, these guys, it was pretty sloppy. It was pretty sloppy. I don't know, man. Like, I think relying on guys that just come off the Contender Series, like these two have, it's just completely like winging shots that I just thought were like the punching was just awful. Just like looping hooks, women's MMA-esque hooks. So yeah, it wasn't a great look, I've got to say, for flyweight. And then CJ Vergara defeats Daniel Da Silva. Da Silva has also fought and lost to Altamirano. He's now 0-4 in the UFC. Why are you still there, mate? Like, were they that hard up for someone to come in and fight? I mean, Jesus. And he was supposed to face Vinicius Salvador as well, like in December. Is it just these four lads fighting each other? Is that all they've got? They talked about the 10-8 potentially in the Sandhagen Vera fight. This fight had actually probably had close to 2 10-8 rounds here, which was Da Silva, first round, put it on Vergara, and Vergara was sprinting away, like literally running around the cage, and Da Silva following him. Obviously, and then because like he just couldn't stand in southpaw, he couldn't do it, so he had to like run around the cage until he got into orthodox. So that was hilarious. Also was hilarious was the commentary saying like, oh, you know, Da Silva's never gone out the first round, you know, in his wins, when he wins, and it's like, yeah, but he's not won in the UFC, so like, does that really matter? Like, I don't think this guy's very good. It's like, yeah, he's got power, but he has no sense of cardio, so yeah, strange. And then Vergara turns it around. mushes De Silva into the ground. They both mushed each other into the ground. If they got to the end of that second round, to me, it would have been 2 10-8 rounds. Apparently, only one judge scored the first round of 10-8, which is like, Jesus Christ, what do you need, like an assassination out there? Like, I don't know how you don't score that at 10-8. Anyway, Flyweight has now got to the stage where they've got kind of hilarious bad fighters in their in the division now. But hey ho. Now I want to talk about PFL. It was nice to hear Dan Hardy back, but there's 2 fighters I want to talk about from this card. Where is he? Yeah, Lewis McGrillen Evans defeats Salil Kulikan. Now, Kulikan falls to 6 wins, 8 defeats. Yeah, Lewis McGrillen Evans moves to 7-0 at bantamweight. Now, he progresses in the PFL tournament, Europe tournament, which I believe if you win that, you then go on to the global tournament for the next season, which will be for 2024. I like that. That's a nice idea. That's a really nice idea. And also what I like about the PFL is that it's actually offering guys multiple fights a year, like guaranteed multiple fights a year, which for a lot of young fighters I think is something that needs to be at the front of them, at the forefront of their minds. Sorry, man, that coffee. Woof. Anyway, McGrillen Evans impressed me with his power. Now, obviously, Kulikan is not the top of the division. We get that. Neither should McGrillen Evans be facing that at this stage of his career. But it was like when I watched the Caleb Plant David Benavidez fight from Saturday. McGrillen Evans, he has that power where like guys just sort of like pause, where they're like, wait, hold on, what? Like they're just sort of like their feet are like, all right, let me get myself back together, man. And it's like he got pause you, drop you power, which is exciting to see. I mean, he leaves himself open at points for counters, which was not going to come from Kulikan. But he's got quite significant power, so I'll be interested to see him again, see what he gets in the next stage of the PFL Europe tournament. Next one in Berlin in July. Excited to see what happens there. Also, you got Dakota Decheva. She won her fight against Malin Hermansson at flyweight. She's got quite an interesting record, or at least a background. Her family are all Muay Thai fighters, and she's got quite a well-regarded Muay Thai record as well. She's now 3-0 in the UFC, in the PFL. Be interested to see a bit more of her. She got a submission win here, obviously not against the best opposition, but it was again interesting to see another young British fighter coming up there. But the one that I really want to talk about is Simeon Powell, defeated Mohamed Amin. Mohamed Amin sort of trains out the same gym as like Gegard Mousasi here in the Netherlands. He fought Simeon Powell. Now Simeon Powell at light heavyweight is 6'5", same height as me, and he has an 85-inch reach, which is 1 inch greater than John Jones. We finally found one. We finally found one bigger than John Jones. This is his 4th fight in the UFC, in the PFL. I'm doing it again, man. I'm sorry. 4th fight in the PFL. His 3rd finish, his first submission finish, was really nice arm triangle choke at the end of the second round, where Amin sort of toughed it out, and then bell goes, and then Amin, he lets go of the choke, and then Amin goes to sleep. Like it was, and they just called it off from there. It was a really well done finish. But before that, Powell was like just piecing him up. But you can see that Powell is like a really well-rounded fighter, but he's just missing those little, how can I put it, like those little movements, those little things where like it's not quite there yet. But he has such a huge physical advantage over people that it's hard for me to imagine that he's going to face too many problems at first. What I can see being a potential problem is that when people strike, he does lean back and he leaves his feet there, which I think could be there for a takedown. Obviously, you don't want to be pulling your feet back and leaving your head there. But if you're throwing with the hands, obviously, you can just sort of pull back from there. But the problem is that he can pull back and still be in range because of how good his reach is. So he could be one to look out for here in the PFL. I'll be excited to see who he faces next in the next stage in Berlin. No, wait, hold on. That's not where he's going to be facing next, is it? It's going to be in Paris. I think it'll be the one afterwards he'll be fighting at. But yeah, I'll be interested to see who he has next there. He's training out of Great Britain Top Team, which is the Brad Pickett gym. Yes, exciting prospect is Mr. Powell. Right, listeners, we'll be back next week to talk about Pereira versus Adesanya 2, brackets number 4, and Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Burns at UFC 287. Will we talk about Game Bread Boxing? No, we won't. But we'll be back next week. You can contact us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com. You can like, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll reply to you. Maybe on the show as well. Leave a question if you wish. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this delayed Sunday post. So late, it was on the next day. And you all have a lovely day. Goodbye.
I'm so tired of hearing your voice in the phone. I wish you'd go away, leave me and my family alone. All the things you said have no interest in me. I'm just waiting for you to go that you see. So don't bring me up. Don't bring me up. I said don't bring me up anymore. The things you say are all too much for my head. I'd rather watch the TV or hear a good record instead. Is there ring you up at 6? Is that okay? But you never wait for the answer. I have to say, hey, so don't bring me up. Don't bring me up. I said don't bring me up anymore. In my head.